Guys, my name is Ankush Gaurav and I welcome you to Contour series. This tutorial is in continuation with the earlier one where I showed how to create a custom form validation annotation with the help of a very simple example in this demo application. What I did, I created a custom form validation annotation with the name isValidHobby. And how I created that? By simply following these steps as suggested by the framework. So I included these two Java files in the project with the name isValidHobby.java and hobbyvalidator.java. These two Java files together gave me a custom form validation annotation with the name isValidHobby, which I simply then used on top of student hobby field like this. In this Java file, I provided the complete definition of this custom form validation annotation. And here, in this Java file, I provided the actual validation logic used by isValidHobby annotation at runtime for validating the user input for student hobby field. So after including these two Java files in the project and putting this annotation on top of student hobby field, now when the user provides an invalid value here in the student hobby field, means a value which is not present in this list of valid hobby values, and submits the form, the application is going to complain with this error message. And if he provides a valid value here, say music, means a value which is present here in this list of valid hobby values, and submits the form, the application is going to work with no issues. Guys, all this which I just talked about in a very brief manner, I explained in detail in the previous tutorial. Now let's proceed further and learn more about the same concept in a little more depth. Guys, if you observe some of the built-in form validation annotations which are supported by Spring MVC framework, you would find that some of them accept parameters like size annotation. If you observe, this annotation accepts parameters, min and max values, and whatever developer would provide here as its parameters, this annotation is going to behave accordingly at runtime. Now what if we also want to have a kind of similar feature developed for this custom annotation too? Let me explain what I'm really talking about here with an example. At present, isValidHobby custom annotation validates the user input for student hobby field using this set of hard-coded values which I have provided here in the hobbyvalidator.java file. Now, what if we could do something here so that the developer himself would provide a valid list of hobbies as a string parameter to this custom annotation? So the idea is very clear. I would simply remove this set of hard-coded values from here, and thereafter the developer himself is allowed to provide a valid list of hobbies as a string parameter to this custom annotation, and this annotation would simply consider that parameter's value for validating the user input for student hobby field. So question is how we would do it. Spring MVC framework says, hey developers, whatever parameter you would want a custom form validation annotation to accept, you simply declare that parameter in the Java file which is having its definition. So here, because you want this custom annotation to accept a string parameter, so I would need to declare here a parameter with string as its data type. So here I've declared this variable list of valid hobbies with string as its data type. So the idea is very clear. If I want this custom annotation to accept int parameter, then I would be declaring here this variable with int as its data type. Now because I want this custom annotation to accept a string parameter, so I have declared here a variable with string as its data type. Now if you observe, after including this statement here, this annotation has started showing up an error message. It's saying it's incorrectly written, And why it's saying it's incorrectly written? Because here with this statement, now we have to provide a parameter to it with the name list of valid hobbies, and we need to provide a valid list of hobbies in it. So what I'll do, I'll simply copy this list of valid hobbies from here and would paste here, right? So with this, we have made all necessary changes successfully in this application, which would allow this custom annotation to accept a string parameter like this. Now the only change which we need to make over here is to make few changes in this class so that this class would start considering this value for validating the user input instead of this hard-coded list. And that we can only do if this class can access this value which is provided by developer as a parameter to this custom annotation. So question is how this class would get this value. Guys, before we proceed further, let me tell you an important point about a validator class which is used by a custom annotation. A custom annotation always makes a call to isValid function of its corresponding validator class. But the point to note is, before making a call to isValid function, it makes sure to make a call to initialize function. So the idea is very clear. Before making a call to isValid function, a custom annotation always makes a call to initialize function of its corresponding validator class. And so is the case over here. This custom annotation would also make a call to initialize function before it would make a call to isValid function while validating the user input for student hobby field. And in this function, there is a straightforward provision for retrieving this value which is provided by developer by simply doing something like this, right? I would make few more changes over here. And here I would remove this set of hard-coded values and instead I would provide list of valid hobbies, this one. With all these modifications, now this Java file is going to consider this list of valid hobbies for validating the user input for student hobby field in this function. Guys, let me tell you one more important point over here. Here, if I remove this parameter, then this custom annotation would start showing up an error message. It means this is a mandatory parameter for this custom annotation. Now, what if I would want to make it an optional parameter for this custom annotation? Let me explain with an example. What I want is, if a developer provides this parameter, then this annotation should use this set of values for validating the user input. Otherwise, there should be some default values of hobbies available with this annotation for validating the user input for student hobby field. So question is how we would achieve this. We can achieve this by simply putting some default set of values along with this variable with this syntax. Now after this change, if a developer provides this set of values, the annotation is going to consider that set for validating the user input for student hobby field. Otherwise, for the case when he would not provide a parameter to this custom annotation, this annotation would use this set of valid hobbies for validating the user input for student hobby field. Alright, guys, a big thank you for learning Spring MVC framework with me. If you have any feedback or comments, please provide them below the video or simply write to me on this email ID for all of your queries. Please hit the like button if you really like this video and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel Contour Series, and I'm gonna catch you in my next tutorial.